Hey everybody, and welcome to a very special video where I'm going to be giving you my initial impressions on the Nintendo Switch and 4 of its launch games. So let me start out by saying that this is going to be a bit of a non-traditional video for me in the sense that it's going to be a series of still images that I'm going to talk over. And that's for a couple of different reasons. One is I don't really have a great means for getting footage directly off of the Switch at this point in time. And also, Nintendo kind of has a tendency and a reputation for coming down hard on YouTubers that show gameplay of their various games without being part of their partner slash affiliate program. But I think I've come up with a way of doing this video in a manner that should allow me to still talk about everything I want to talk about, give you guys something interesting to look at, and not anger Nintendo. So without further ado, let's get this party started. First and foremost, I wanted to talk a little bit about the packaging that the console comes in and the general experience of opening this thing up and getting comfortable with it. I think they did a really good job presentation wise, and I really felt like the whole time I was going through this box opening experience that I was being presented with something pretty special and pretty cool and pretty unique. All things considered, Nintendo did a really good job with this aspect of the Switch. So once you get the box open, you're immediately presented with the console itself and the two Joy-Con controllers. One thing that I really like about the way they've done this packaging is the fact that everything's individually wrapped and compartmentalized, and it makes you feel like you're kind of opening a little treat each time you open up one of these little baggies and pull something out of it. And actually, by the time I got through the process of unboxing this thing, I had opened and unwrapped so many individual pieces that it actually felt very satisfying to a point where even if you're really hardcore into unboxings and opening things, I feel like there's more than enough in this packaging and the way they present it and organize it to keep you busy for a good long while and make the whole experience feel pretty satisfying. Talking for a minute about the Joy-Con controllers themselves, I have to say I was really impressed with how solid and surprisingly weighty they feel given their size. These are pretty small controllers, and I have fairly large hands, at least slightly larger than average. And the Joy-Cons felt very comfortable in the grip to me. Both the right and the left Joy-Con just felt very natural and comfortable and easy to hold on to. I don't really foresee myself having a lot of trouble keeping a grip on these things or hitting the buttons that I need to hit, whether they're attached to the system itself or the Joy-Con grip or being held individually. I could definitely understand why people with very large hands might have some issue with precise movements and button presses on the Joy-Cons, because the sticks are a bit smaller than what you're used to, and the buttons are a bit smaller than what you're used to from other game controllers. But at the same time, you can sort of work those things to your advantage, especially if you have larger hands. I, for example, found it was very easy in a lot of cases to rest one finger on one button and be able to use that as a pivot point and then use the end of my digit to press another button that I was also lined up with. So for example, you might put the inside of your knuckle on the A button and then rest the tip of your thumb on the X button and be able to effectively hit both buttons reliably with the same finger. Now, of course, your mileage may vary here as everybody's hands are a little bit different and everybody's preferences are a little bit different with how they hold and use a controller. But I think in general, the Joy-Cons are very well designed and very well put together. And I've definitely been impressed by what I've seen and used of them so far. As for the console itself, it's very comfortable and pleasantly weighted and easy to handle even with one hand. I certainly could imagine somebody dropping it, being careless with it, but you could really say that about any mobile device, be it a phone or a tablet or what have you. I think the Switch in general fits very nicely in the hand. It has a good weight to it. It's heavy enough to be noticeable and feel sturdy without being so heavy or large as to be unwieldy. And of course, you can't talk about the Switch itself and the Joy-Cons without at least mentioning the cool and clever way that they connect to one another. Not to mention the handy and cleverly designed kickstand that allows you to prop the Switch up on pretty much any flat surface and detach the Joy-Cons to play in a variety of different ways. Of particular note, I do have to say I do not see any issue with the kickstand and its design. I know that's been a point that various folks have brought up as a potential weakness of the system's design, but the way the kickstand deploys and locks into place and can break away without breaking itself if pressed too hard in the wrong direction, I think is all very well designed and feels solid, and I don't see the kickstand really being an issue, either in terms of holding the system up and keeping it in place reliably, or being sturdy or well designed enough to stand the test of time. There's definitely something to be said for experiencing the Switch firsthand and getting to touch and play with it for yourself. I would highly recommend any of you who are interested in the Switch in the slightest go and seek it out in person, be that at a store event or by tracking down and cornering one of your friends who already has one, and just giving yourself the opportunity to experience what it has to offer in person. Because a lot of the quote unquote magic of this system is, in my opinion, something that you just have to experience for yourself. Nobody can really tell you about it. You just kind of get it when you have it in your hands. So here we have layer 2 of the packaging, which includes the Joy-Con grip, the assorted cables, the Joy-Con extender straps, the meager documentation, which basically consists of a large double-sided sheet of paper folded 8 times with very basic safety and quick start instructions in various languages. If you're a big fan of reading manuals, getting immersed in the little technical details of a system before you actually start playing with it and using it, you might be a bit disappointed in the documentation associated with the Switch, but by the same token, it is impressive that anyone with the slightest bit of technical acumen can pretty much get all this stuff figured out and set up in a matter of minutes without even looking at the docs. Here we have a better look at the Joy-Con grip itself. Keep in mind that this does not actually charge the Joy-Cons when they're connected to it. It simply indicates the player that the Joy-Cons represent when the individual lights illuminate. But it is quite sturdy, and with the Joy-Cons attached to it, it does provide a very firm, reliable platform for using them, much like a traditional gamepad. And of course, here we have the Joy-Cons attached to the grip. Again, the weight of this stuff is substantial enough to be noticeable and feel firm and solid, without being so heavy as to be distracting or tiresome or otherwise uncomfortable. The way the Joy-Cons and the grip feel when they're assembled together like this is definitely very pleasant and satisfying as far as I'm concerned. And I wanted to show you guys a bit of the back of the Joy-Con because I know there haven't been a lot of images circulating of this, but you can see at the top there, those are the quick release buttons that actually you have to press to then slide the Joy-Cons off the grip or the console or the extension straps or whatever you might have them attached to. I found with my personal unit, these took a few times of connecting them and disconnecting them from various things to really break in. But after about a half dozen or a dozen connections and reconnections, everything sort of loosened up and got really smooth and functional to the point where removing the Joy-Cons from pretty much any of the other accessories that they attach to has become very easy for me even after just a few hours of doing it. So here we get a better look at the accessories. They're the Joy-Cons with the extenders and straps attached to them. The included HDMI cable, which I think is quite good for a bundled cable. Not so thin as to be cheap or have to worry about fraying. Not so thick as to be unwieldy and difficult to bend and get it into the position you want it to be in. I will, however, say that the power cable, which normally connects to the dock but also can be directly connected to the system for charging on the go, is a bit shorter than I might have preferred. In my particular entertainment system scenario, it was just barely long enough to get from where I placed the dock to where I had my power strip set up, and I could definitely see a benefit and advantage to perhaps another foot or two of length in the power cable. Another thing I definitely want to mention is that the Joy-Con extenders slash straps were definitely the most challenging accessory to remove the Joy-Cons from once they had been attached to them. especially when I first started using them. The tolerances on these seem to be a little tighter than on the console itself or on the Joy-Con grip, and because you have a lot less to grab onto whenever you're in the process of removing the Joy-Cons from these, I definitely found that to be one of the trickier operations, and it took me a little while and a little more force than I probably would have preferred initially to get the Joy-Con separated from these reliably. Having fiddled with these a bunch and attaching and removing the Joy-Cons to both of them repeatedly, it definitely feels as though there is a break-in process where once you remove them from the extenders a few times, the process becomes a little easier. But it's definitely something to keep in mind, especially if you have little ones in your Switch household. They may have a little bit of trouble removing the Joy-Cons from these, at least initially. And here we have the dock itself, which is pretty straightforward and simple. Not a lot of actual hardware associated with the dock. I will say I do like the way that the cable management panel simply drops down with simple pressure and no real latching mechanism or clever mechanics that could potentially break after long usage. I definitely appreciate the simple elegance of a lot of the design of this Switch hardware, and I'll give you a closer look at the ports here in a minute. Here we have the Switch placed into the dock, and I definitely enjoy and appreciate the ease with which this is accomplished. I also think it's a very elegant design, the way that the Switch is held into the dock with simple pressure and gravity, as opposed to any kind of deliberate locking mechanism that could potentially wear down over time. It's just the simple weight of the console that keeps it connected. I also wanted to touch briefly on the packaging for the cartridge-based games. I find the size and general construction of the cases to be pretty adorable. I will say I was somewhat surprised and a little disappointed that the packages for the two games that I purchased did not come with any sort of documentation of any kind. No manual, no inserts, not even an advertisement or card of any sort. But I did appreciate what was done in particular with the Breath of the Wild inside case, as I find that particular piece of art with Link climbing the sheer cliff very attractive and think it fits well in the context of that. It was something kind of neat and fun to see when opening the case for the first time. I will also note here what many others have noted, that there is a safety mechanism in place on the cartridges themselves, such that if a small child were to put one of them in their mouth, the labels themselves contain a chemical compound that is not harmful to humans, but is extremely unpalatable to the point of retching, such that it would highly discourage any little ones from swallowing one of these cards, which otherwise might be a real possibility. So good on you, Nintendo, for thinking of that and coming up with a clever, if repugnant, solution to that potential problem. Here we have a closer look at the connectors on the dock. As you can see, the power connectors on top, which can be connected either way since it is USB-C, and the HDMI connector on the bottom, and of course the mysterious USB connector in the middle there, which we have not gotten any information to this point in time as to what that's actually going to do, but it's good to know that it's there for whatever it's going to be used for in the future. And here I wanted to give you guys another look at the inside of the kickstand bay, because this of course is where any micro SD card you might get to enhance the storage capabilities of the system would go. I myself did not opt for a micro SD card right away at launch because the two larger games that I purchased I got in cartridge form, and the two downloadable games that I picked up were small enough that I didn't feel like they chewed enough into the 32 gigabytes of built-in internal storage to warrant picking up an SD card at launch. Again, I think this is a really clever design, how the kickstand essentially acts as a cover slash protector for the SD card slot. Along those same lines, I have nothing but good things to say about the cartridge port on the top. It's easily accessible, the built-in cover makes it easy to protect the slot when a cartridge is not inserted in it, and I had no difficulty whatsoever adding and removing cartridges using the spring-loaded mechanism that's part of the slot. The spring is very firm, feels very durable, and I don't really see any potential problems there in terms of wear and tear, which is not at all surprising given Nintendo's history with using small cartridge-based systems.